Good morning, welcome to 59 Minutes. My name is Derek Ones. This morning we're going to be talking about the 23rd edition of the International Book Fair that's being held over this weekend at Sarit Center in Westlands. And to join me in having that discussion and many other discussions about books generally is AGATHA KARANI. She is the MD of BOOKMARK Africa. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, tell me, let's start with BOOKMARK Africa. What's that about?
BOOKMARK Africa is a new startup publishing company. We started off in 2012, and we started off as an early grade learners. So we specialize in early childhood books and any other material that is in form of charts and flashcards.
Yeah.
So basically we focus on ECDE, and that's how we started off. But then came the new curriculum, because as we started the publishing house, we wanted to start a house where we grow with the learners. So we anticipated the new curriculum coming in, and the idea was to grow with it so that the learner we start with at that particular time goes up with us. So we have been developing material from PP1 and PP2, and now we have grown. We have material up to grade 7, and we also have literature material that is general reading material. So for the young learners, we also have readers, level readers, which are developed based actually and guided by the requirements of the KICD and the Ministry of Education. And other than that, we also incorporate the international standards of publishing, meaning that whatever publication we have for the learner can actually be used internationally.
Yeah.
And just to actually emphasize that our early grade material have been developed by authors who are internationally renowned. They've written in many countries around the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting we're having that discussion.
Yes.
At this point in time when there's a lot of talk about, the learning system, especially for preschoolers.
Yes.
And so many people with different opinions, and you are a teacher.
Yes.
First, if I may ask, because you've been a teacher in high school for so long,
Yes.
why the interest with preschool? What's special there?
Now, preschool is the most important. It is the foundation of all learning. Whatever you begin with at that particular level is what sets, the future of this learner. And actually, my experience in having visited the UK, I found out that at preschool is where they have the most qualified educators, teachers. So for some of the preschool centers, you'd find that if you do not have a PhD, then you cannot handle those learners. It is where you're forming the character.
The foundation.
The foundation of all learning. So preschool for us meant a lot, because you have to get the child to read right. You have to get them to write properly. You have to start to create their thinking. And that's where everything begins in learning. Yes.
Very interesting. Eh?
Yes.
And here there's a tendency for us to consider seriously how they learn when they get to high school.
Yes.
Why do you think that is so? Is it a culture issue? Is it
not purely, maybe not a culture issue, but it's the way we look at how much do I spend, how much do I want to put into this. And for most parents, actually, they don't want to spend, but the best schools, the best nursery schools, if you look at them, actually the fees costs more than what it costs sometimes in
high school.
In high school, and
True.
Even currently in most primary schools, you see that if you go to the private schools, most parents are putting their children in the private schools, spending more because they think that they want to save on the high school. Yes, but clearly, if you invest and if you put in the best at that lower level, thanks at least to the changing times, now we have people who are doing degrees, they're doing PhDs in early grade learning. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I want to bring you back to this CBC, but let me talk
Yes.
about what's happening this weekend first.
yes.
It's the 23rd edition of this book fair.
Yes.
Briefly, to a layman, to somebody who's never heard about it,
Mm.
what's this about?
Okay, so the Nairobi International Book Fair is a forum where Kenyan publishers, it is organized by the Kenya Publishers Association. And Kenya Publishers Association is made of publishers, that is people who prepare content, learning material and literature material. And then in the association we also have some booksellers, we also have printers, and in the current 23rd International Book Fair, we're calling it international because it actually draws international exhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
So these people come together to showcase, to interact with learners, to interact with teachers, to interact with authors, and even amongst ourselves as publishers, just to benchmark, to take note of what your colleagues are doing in the industry. And it also brings us together to celebrate. And in particular, this particular book fair, we also are going to have the Jomo Kenyatta Prize of Literature and the Wahome Mutai Prize of Literature.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we award a pool of authors who have put themselves together, brought up their books to us. We have evaluated them. I mean, it's a tight competition, it's a big pool, but we have those that we shortlisted, okay? And we are looking forward to awarding the winners, which will be done tomorrow, Saturday evening at the close. So the book fair actually opened up yesterday. It was officially opened yesterday by Professor Mudhui, and we had special guests like Ambassador Mudhaura, who
yes.
graced the occasion, and also we had the chair of Kenya Literature Bureau gracing the occasion, and the person we call the father of the book fair, and he's been a mentor to many of us in the publishing industry.
Mm-hmm.
We had the chair of East African Publishers, that is Dr. Henry Chakava with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it's really like a book fest for book lovers.
It is a book festival, yes, for book lovers and those interested in learning, because like tomorrow we have 2 workshops. Today we have 1 workshop.
Mm-hmm.
That is the Kekobo workshop, that is educating
on the sideline of that.
On the sideline, yeah, the Kenya Copyright Board. Yeah, so they are there educating and just giving people of the insights of copyright, because for us that is what is core business as well. We want to ensure that the content we are bringing out or that the authors are giving us is genuine, and of course just trying to cut out on piracy, because that is something that we as publishers are worried about.
Yeah, people say give me PDF.
Yeah, give me a PDF,
And
or I
they
photocopy that and you don't have permission to do that. Yeah, so piracy is a problem for us, even as publishers, of course eating into the sales of most of the publishers around. Yes.
Yeah, for there are those who say that we are not a reading nation. Would you agree?
I agree. I agree, because if we were a reading nation, then we'd have so many publishing houses, I would say. Currently, the Kenya Association of Publishers, we are about 127 or so. But if you go to the book fair right now, there are very few publishers. We are just about 60 publishers showcasing there. And we have a few international publishers. But if people had a reading culture, definitely, we'd expect to have many more publishers. It's sad that the Kenya Publishers Association, in this particular book fair, the number of publishers exhibiting have gone down. Why is many publishing houses have closed down? Okay, some do not just have enough. They would like to come and exhibit, but of course they're limited because of the budget. Now, as a reading nation, we need to be seeing that with the sales that we are making, because people think that investing in books is expensive, and of course they complain that books are expensive.
Yeah.
But if we had a reading culture, unfortunately, then would see that from the returns that we are making, because you publish a book, but by the time you sell a book, you know, you could count, if it's a literature book, you'd not do like 2,000. You have biographies, yes, and most people will sell, and that is why when you come to the book fair, you might notice the bulk of the material there is educational material, course books, because Kenyans have this tendency of, you read for an exam. I buy a book because somebody will not buy a storybook, for example, for the child, or they'll say the book is expensive. But clearly, if you want to invest, the best investment is in knowledge. The knowledge economy is the foundation, actually, of any economy, because then would not even be talking about taxing reading material. Right now, the cost of paper has more than doubled, okay, than what it was. So that definitely affects the book seller or the publisher, because then I can't print enough, okay? But if we'd have more people reading, if we'd have parents reading to their children, and thanks to CBC, even as we say that the parental engagement as it is, what parents need to do is tell me, what story did you read today? Because all parents do is, have you done your homework? Or all a teacher will say, have you done your homework?
Yeah.
Yes, but the beauty of what we are having is that I give you this book, okay? I give you questions, and that's what, more or less like what CBC is doing. So they're having books, and these books tend to have questions, a few questions, and you encourage that the learner is going to find this other information in the other books. The information will only be found in storybooks. So even as some parents will try and say that it is expensive, we cannot get, we can't get information. Information is in the books. You must read. If you don't get information, for many of the population today is, I want to get information, but I want to get it at a click. I Google, okay, Wikipedia. But what happens to those other learners who are in places where they cannot access that information digitally? What happens? Then they need to get the information from the hard copy.
Yeah.
Yes. So a lot of information is in the hard copy, which people don't want to go and do. People want instant information.
They do. I see
Yes.
it even on social media. People will,
Yes.
and then they say comments, fupi.
Yes, because all I need to change you is, sometimes if I put information on my phone, many people will run away with it without even verifying. That's like you talk about the fake news that happens.
Yes.
I only need to type something fake, put it up online and post it, and everybody goes and believes. Yes. And so even at the university, you see many students are running away because people don't want to read. But the real information, the truth, you can only clarify, you can verify when you read sometimes the hard copy. However, as publishers, going back to the theme of this year's book fair is publishing for the new era. So what we are trying to do is, and what many publishers are now doing is, when they have a hard copy of a book, they're also trying to ensure that the material is there in digital form, okay? But you must read. So it's not just for fun. The only way we can influence our population is getting them to read. And so we are looking at now trying to take our content, digitize it, and that way we can reach as many as we can. And even as we prepare our materials for the CBC, right now we're working with KICD in such a way that whatever information that you have, you must also provide the digital version. So yes, we have a new generation, we're looking at a new era that is going global. We want to have our material reach as many. Kiswahili is slowly becoming, it is now a foreign language. It is the newest foreign language. Yes. So what happens is, with our readers, if I had this soft copy, then I'd reach as many as I can. Yes. And I still have the hard copy. Many people in Nairobi complain about the traffics and all that. Yet, what are they doing? What do you do when you're in traffic? Do you read? Because yes, you can read. You can read if you have the digital copy. You can read if you have the audiobook. Yes. So
audiobooks, yeah, that's
yes.
it's an interesting way to go, and I think that readership is beginning to pick. But
Yes.
as you say about the fact that we do not read much,
Yes.
how do we change that mentality? I saw a lot of children yesterday
Yes.
at the launch, and I wondered whether taking them young would help shape that ideal as they grow older. Because as you rightfully say,
Yes.
finding somebody, when I was growing up, we read a lot of storybooks.
Yes.
A lot of storybooks all the
Yes.
time. We were reading Chinua Achebe, we were reading, I don't know, Meja Mwangi, we were reading,
Yes.
Pace Setters.
Yes.
And I remember our school library was, but then we also did not have phones. We had no access to like social media.
Yes.
So we had maybe no choice
Yes.
but to, immerse ourselves in books. Now with social media and all the things that are happening, with all the apps that are out there, the book reader, as you say, even in a vehicle, a matatu, a bus,
Yes.
a plane, it's very difficult to find somebody reading, even a newspaper.
True, true. Now, what I will tell you is, when you start reading, you know that when you're carrying that child, the moment you're expecting the baby, start reading. Start reading. Start reading to that child. Okay? I've seen parents who've read books to their babies even before they are born. I don't know what's the science behind that, but you read. And as the child is born, there's a book for every age. So right at 3-year-old, read to the baby. The moment the baby starts listening and interacting, what you'll find these days is you find young mothers, for example, today, they have a gadget because the gadgets are available. But what is it? If you put garbage in those gadgets, then kids are just going to pick that. So start reading, let the child read. As they are young, they may use the visual, the pictures, but have a book along the child, read the book. So we do have books for as early as 3 years, okay? So where you're reading to the child before they start even talking. Instead of giving a gadget and letting them just watch, read to the child. Then soon after, the child starts early, then read together. The days of bedtime stories, I don't know if they are still there, because I read to my children. Or I put them to bed, I read to them, okay? Yes, we read a story every night. So they get used to that. Every weekend, on Sunday, after church, what happens? We get books. By the time, I remember we're living in Kikuyu, by the time we get to Kikuyu, they finished reading the books. So they're looking forward to the next trip because they know we get into a bookshop, then we would have problems actually getting one of these kids outside the bookshop. Because they read, and he discovered that actually you can read this book, so he reads, he hides there, he goes, but you see there's what we have to buy. So we go, and the parent today may look at it as expensive, for example, at that early age. And let me tell you, producing a book for an early child, for a child, is more expensive actually than publishing for a grown-up, because this comes with artwork and images. Children see the image and then they read. So children tend to see the image. Once they have read the image, they tell you about it. So that way they're able to read. So that book is actually more expensive. You find that when parents come to the stalls, they say these books are expensive. But they forget that publishing that younger child's book is more expensive because you pay the illustrator, you pay the designer. Okay?
Oh.
Yes. So it may be 8 pages, and 8 pages is purely what it's supposed to be.
Oh.
But you have all those other costs that have come in. Why is a small child's book small and again yet expensive? Is you want to give them that sense of achievement. When they read one book, they feel they read a book, they finished. Okay? So sometimes you get parents coming and saying, these books, they're so small, they're so expensive. Okay? But how does a child move? So they slowly progress. Okay? Slowly they progress, and that is what it is supposed to be. Okay? International standards, the guidelines to learning, vetted by KICD. So you'll find they're very small, thin books. They're certain, they have to be specific number of lines in a book. For a certain age, it's just 2 lines per page. Then it goes, slowly builds up, slowly. So that sense of achievement, okay? Then of course, normally when you read your books, like if I talk about our early readers, at the end of that book, there are activities, there are questions. And what happens is now the parent is engaging with the child. So it's not just reading the book for the sake of it, but there are lessons at the end of the book. There are activities within that book. So talk about that book. And publishing in the new era, one of the core values for the CBC for publishing now in this new era is collaboration and communication. So yes, read the book, talk about it.
That's very interesting. Then you have at least a bit of a discussion, and that helps.
So what is it that the parent is saying, this is too much for the parent? That's your child. How do you get your child to think? How do you challenge them? If that is the assignment they were given, to go and read that book, okay? Because if you do not have time to sit and talk, give an explanation, say, okay, you have a book, give the child the book, let them read, they will have found information. Then let them tell you what they learned.
I want you to give us the advantages of that, because I find nowadays, even in our own industry here, where we have journalists, sometimes expression of self on paper is so wanting. You know, you tell somebody, you know, write me a letter. And you read the letter and you can't believe they even went to university. You know,
there's an era of, you say, copy-paste knowledge, and as a teacher, I'll tell you that we've had learners come, for example, to high school. They score very high at KCPE. And when they tell you how they learned how to write, is teachers would give them certain compositions. So they write, you know, we are calling it the drilling. So they are drilled to write in a certain way. So if it is not like that, so they come to high school, then you ask them, write this for me. It is totally different. The same child who scored probably 99 out of 100
starts getting
at KCPE, you give them the same exam now at high school. They've come to Form 1. You give them the same. They score for you 58 or 68. You wonder what happened in between. So it is the teaching and learning method that they were used to. So they may have scored that very high grade. We're calling it knowledge-based because they were being drilled. So in the workplace, probably they're used to working on templates. Okay, I get a template, download it, and I put it there. So they cannot express themselves. But when you read, when you learn, there's a lot of vocabulary you pick up. You're speaking from your heart, and clearly you're able to express yourself better. So you cannot rule out, you cannot separate reading of books. You only get better at writing, reading, and expressing yourself through reading of books. And reading a variety of books. If one thing that would like as publishers, currently there's the one book policy in schools, whereby, say, at the primary school level, we had learners just getting one book from one publisher. So some parents have complained that the kids are carrying too many books to school. Which kids are passing? The kids in the private schools that are carrying, because they have a variety. Different writers have different ways of expressing themselves. So when you are exposed to variety, then you become richer, okay? But if I just give you one way of looking and writing things, okay, then that limits you within that particular author, because you're influenced by that author alone.
Yeah.
But different authors can give the same information in very different ways, okay? And again, if this particular author has this weakness, then unfortunately that weakness will be passed to every other child, okay? So if you have more, the better. Yes. So expose the learners to as many books
as possible.
As possible, yes. So that way they benefit. And even the teachers, let the teachers choose from as much of the learning material that it is there for them. Because usually, for example, the current course books or the story books, there's a variety that is approved by KICD. So give it to the teachers, let them go through, and then let them pick. Because there's a way I look at things, there's a way I see things that is different. Every learner has their own different. Then if you get the learner who's very good and finishes their work with that one book, what do you do with that learner? You can't leave them. So you have to give them, expose them to more, because that is a gifted learner. Okay? So don't limit them. And especially the urban children, what has happened, and maybe that's why some parents think, oh, these kids have too many books. They're fast learners, of course, probably. And so when they finish with that, what happens? Then they're going to get bored, definitely. So they will get bored. So for you, they have exceeded those expectations. So give them more, challenge them. So don't leave them at that level.
I hear you.
Yes.
We are going to take a quick break on that note. When we come back, more about books this morning. Don't go away.